Greetings, friends and fellow film fans. Thanks for stopping by. Today I want to talk about a kind of an interesting movie, and it's called Damnation Alley, and it was released in 1977. It was directed by Jack Schmidt, and it was based on a novel by Rogers and Lindsay. Now, this is more or less a post-apocalyptic survival story, and it features the exploits of the Landmaster and its crew. And this is sort of like a tricked out all-terrain vehicle with rockets and cool gadgets and stuff like that. And it's designed so the characters can take it through this post-apocalyptic landscape and survive. So basically what's happened in the movie is there's a nuclear war, and these Air Force characters, they're based in like an Air Force base, and they're surviving there, but they start to run out of supplies and whatnot, and they get a message, like a radio signal, that there are survivors in Albany, New York. So they got to cross the desert. They're like in the West Coast somewhere, and they're in a desert, and they got to cross the United States landscape to get to Albany, New York. And one of the characters, he calls this nightmare landscape Damnation Alley, and that's where the title comes from. And along the way, they encounter all kinds of obstacles and problems. So kind of on the surface, that's a neat idea, that you got this post-apocalyptic nightmare landscape, you got these soldier characters in this tricked out Landmaster vehicle crossing this nightmare landscape of the United States, hitting a bunch of different pockets of resistance and problems to get to their goal. So on the surface, I mean, that's a pretty cool concept, I think, and it sounds good on paper, and I want to talk about that a little more. But to do that, I'm going to break into the clipboard of creeps right off the bat, because I got a few things I want to say about that. So the first thing I want to say is that this film debuted in the United States on NBC television on June 12th, 1983. And in that televised version, they actually showed scenes that weren't in the original theatrical version from 1977. Now, what I want to say about that is I was probably watching that broadcast that night, because in my memory, I saw this film as a kid, a real little kid, and I remember watching it on network TV in the evening. So back then, we would watch as a family, we would sit down and watch like the movie of the week, because there wasn't a lot of options. And if there was a cool kind of action movie of the week, and it was on network television, so it was deemed appropriate for families or whatnot, we would sit down as a family and watch it. And I distinctly remember watching Damnation Alley, and it made an impression on me back then as a little kid. And I've always remembered this movie. It's always been in the back of my mind. And I even remember details about it. I remember the cockroaches that would eat your flesh and leave bleached bones behind. I remember the guy on a dirt bike riding around. I remember those things, but I didn't remember every detail because, of course, that was a long time ago. But in my mind, I had kind of a fondness for this. I had a fond memory of this movie, but I'd never seen it again until just now when I picked up this copy of the DVD from the library and sat down and watched it. Now, I'm going to say, having seen it now after so many years, and now I'm an adult, and I've watched many movies in my life, and it's been a long time, I kind of got to say that the shine has come off it a little bit. Now, I'm going to preface this with saying, if you are a fan of Damnation Alley, if you got a fondness for it, a nostalgia for it, please don't think I'm hating on it. That's not what I'm doing. I'm not one to get on these videos and be overly critical of things. That's just not my style. I don't like to do that. I try to find the positive in most viewing experiences. But with that said, this really just doesn't hold up in my mind as what I remember from back then when I watched it as a kid. Watching it today as an adult, it really has a lot of campiness about it. It's kind of silly in places, and the concept is great, but the execution is just a little strange. I never get the sense that the characters are overly in any kind of duress. They're not usually very like frightened or scared of the situation they're in. They're handling it more like swashbuckling action heroes that can handle the situation. A lot of times they have like comedy flair to them. There's hot shot type attitudes toward the situation they're in. And I feel like the situation they're in is a dire one and a scary one, and it just does not have that dark, scary factor. It really has more of a swashbuckling adventure factor, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but I was, I guess, looking for something a little darker than that. It just doesn't, I don't know, just doesn't pop with that horror vibe that I think something like this really kind of needed. It doesn't play it like that. It plays it more like these cavalier characters just kind of swashbuckling their way through this nightmare landscape. And if you're okay with that, then fine. But if you're really looking for something that takes the situation that they created seriously, this, in my opinion, doesn't really do that. Okay, I got one more thing here from the Clipboard of Creeps that I really wanted to note, and I think it's an interesting thing. So, this was a 20th Century Fox film, and this was actually their big budget sci-fi project from 1976. And it actually sat on the shelf for a year while they refined the special effects, and they released it in 1977. The executives at 20th Century Fox expected this to be their big blockbuster sci-fi movie of the year. And they had another sci-fi movie on the hook for 1977 that they didn't have a lot of faith in. And so they put all their advertising into this movie expecting it to be a hit, and they kind of glossed over the other movie that they didn't think was going to do good business. Now, that other movie is a little film you might know of called Star Wars. That's right. They expected Star Wars to flop and this thing to be a big hit. Well, it was the other way around. This movie flopped, and as we all know, Star Wars went on to be what Star Wars was. But I find that kind of funny because I don't see how any network or, I guess, studio executive, because this was a studio picture, could look at the special effects from this and then look at the dailies or the rushes of the special effects for Star Wars and even come close to thinking that the effects in this were anywhere near as good as Star Wars. Because I'm here to tell you, the effects in here, they're not that great. It's a lot of projection screens and just there are models. Sometimes the Landmaster is a model and you can clearly see it's a plastic model. And first of all, let me say, I am not somebody that harps on old special effects. I love classic special effects. I'm somebody that appreciates that. So I know that the older effects aren't going to look like what you have today because it was a different time and they had different technology. And that's part of the charm of things like this for me. But I just think it's funny to note how Damnation Alley, in my opinion, if that was their big budget effects movie of that year, they missed a trick because today it just, you can see the flaws in it. And I'm okay with that on some level, but to say that this was going to be better than Star Wars, it is not better than Star Wars. Not by a long shot. And I just wanted to note that because I just think that's, from a trivia standpoint, a pretty interesting thing. All right, a couple other quick things. This starred George Peppard and Jan Michael Vincent, who would go on to do 80s TV shows that were hits. Of course, Jan Michael Vincent did Airwolf, and George Peppard, as we know, went on to play Hannibal Smith in the A-Team. Now, I never watched Airwolf. I was not into that show. I was aware of it. I might have caught an episode here or there, but I wasn't a big fan of it. But I can tell you right now, A-Team, oh yeah, I was a big fan of that. And when it was released in 1983 on TV, the A-Team was already on TV. So I remember being excited about watching this movie because Hannibal was one of the stars of it. And there is some fun to be had. It's camp fun. But if you're in the mood for something like that, if you don't want to take it too seriously, if you like the concept but you were aware that you're just going to go on a little kind of silly ride that doesn't take itself too seriously, then you might benefit from checking out Damnation Alley. It's fun on that level. It's okay on that level. All right, that's our movie for this week. Damnation Alley, 1977. Some camp fun as long as you kind of don't expect too much. There is some good to be had there. All right, I appreciate you taking the time to watch my video. Thank you very much for that. If you could maybe consider giving us a like, or if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel. That would really help me out. I would like to reach some more people so we can keep these fun conversations about these old classic films going. Keep the clipboard of creeps in business. That would be really awesome. I appreciate it. Thanks again for tuning in, and until the next time, have a good one.